common with most of you here. I am a public servant. My world looks a little bit different from yours though. It can be messy, it can be crazy. It often includes fidget spinners and memes and lots of pop culture references. It can include completely silent testing days. It can include camping in the woods with no shower for like 3 days. I'm a high school humanities teacher. The vast majority of my time is spent with 13 to 14-year-olds. And when I say this, I get typically one of 3 reactions. The first, you're so young, do they respect you? The second, some will look at me pitifully and say, oh, kids these days, I'm so sorry. And the third, people will say, that's incredible. Thank you so much for your hard work. As a self-identifying literature nerd, the theme of your event, So Long, Innovate and Elevate Through Knowledge in Literature, is incredibly inspirational to me. I'm excited that this conversation is happening beyond the walls of a classroom and inside the community that we all live in. The truth is that everybody here is a teacher. Everything you do helps educate our community and our world. You teach by doing and you teach by building, and I am so grateful to all of you. Coincidentally, your beautiful theme reminds me of the reaction I get when I say that I'm a teacher. The first reaction, you're so young. Do they respect you? I'm a little older than people often guess me to be because of my parents' like really great genes. I'm 27, and like she introduced me to, I have 2 master's degrees. I have one in education, and I have my second in art and community practice from NYU. In both of my graduate programs, I experienced the power of story. Respect, I have found, is not earned only through age, though that often helps. Really, respect is earned through stories. I share my life with my students. They share their lives with me. I learn their brothers and sisters' names. I know when parents lose jobs and need some financial help with project materials. I send home emails when I see quiet moments of compassion and leadership happen in my classroom. My parents know my students know my parents. I talk to my students interested in the Navy about my father who served for 26 years. Every year during Career Shadow Day, my mom takes in one of my students to show them what it's like to work for the county. My students know stories of my little sister who currently goes to UC Irvine. She's like the opposite of me. She's majoring in math, so not me at all. I talk about the Philippines. Recently, we've been talking a lot about indigenous rights, so I really appreciate all of the different dances that happened today. We've been talking about indigenous rights here in the United States and in the Philippines, and I encourage them, by example, to look beyond life just here in the United States. And in addition to being United States citizens, to become global citizens, to consciously become part of our whole world. Stories that we tell, stories in the literature that we encounter, it turns out, helps us see and understand one another's humanity. It helps us see how much we have in common. It helps us learn from the differences that we have. Aside from being a teacher, I do a lot of other side projects that have to do with stories. I write fiction, I blog, I act for and I write for Asian Story Theater that earlier this year explored the Filipino-American community through the Halo Halo Project, if anyone came to watch the Halo Halo Project. So I'm a playwright with them and I'm an actor as well. I founded and run Invisible Storybook, where I explore Filipino and Filipino-American stories through community gatherings and children's storybooks. As a child, my father told me Filipino stories. The stories of Juan Tamad, of piña and how the pineapple was created, of the origin of the banana, and more. And these stories helped mold my character. I'm probably the furthest from tamad or lazy that you can possibly find. I've never stolen anything either for fear of my hand being chopped off and growing into bananas. Aside from helping mold my values, these Filipino stories did another thing for me. As I brought them with me into my adulthood, they connected me to my heritage and they helped feed my curiosity about my own roots. The second reaction I get when I explain that I'm a teacher, oh, kids these days, I'm so sorry. Admittedly, sometimes the day is so exhausting that I simply respond, thank you. But most days, the truth is that kids are more inspirational than they've ever been. And in my years in the classroom, almost a decade, I've seen students use the power of technology to grow and advance in ways I could have never imagined when I was in their shoes. It is true that we have to help students make the right choices and see things, and that's where stories come ever more important. Technology can help us share positive stories and build on one another's ideas. It can help us learn from the negativity in the world and start the process of brainstorming to solve the problems that we face. And technology is not going anywhere. I know we're always like, oh, kids are always on their phones. I was just on my phone showing my nanay like me dancing some Filipino dance last night. But what teachers once had to give me in notes in a classroom is now accessible at our students' fingertips. What we need to teach is changing. We can all look up the dates of the Industrial Revolution. All of us, including our students, know how. What is more important is this. Let's make sure we know how to talk to each other, and not just through a screen. Let's make sure we teach responsibility and work ethic and how important these attributes are to have so that we have a functioning and better future. Let's be sure we teach compassion, empathy, curiosity, things that must be learned and practiced through experience. These things cannot just be Googled in the solitude of a dark bedroom behind a lonely lit laptop screen. The truth is that it's not just about kids these days. All of these things need to be practiced by all of us. It's too easy today to forgo human interaction. The knowledge of how to be with one another and how to work together is knowledge that is just too valuable to be placed on the back burner. We must prioritize it with each other and with our children. Invisible Storybook started with a note that I wrote and published on Facebook. It spread wide and far quickly because of the power of technology. And then what we did is harness that quick power to gather people together in person to explore. The very first Invisible Storybook event was to work on a version of Si Malakas at Si Maganda at my parents' house. I met so many people there. People came from wide and far. I know most of the people who arrived. And like with my students, I literally invited them into my home. I invited them into my life, into my parents' lives. Technology allowed what would otherwise be a group of strangers to come together with a common purpose of creating literature for our children. That's what I think is innovation. That's what I think is elevation. It's not about getting rid of technology. It's about using it to connect us instead of to separate us. Finally, people say something akin to, "That's incredible. Thank you for all your hard work." Teaching is the most exhausting job I've ever done, and I'm 8 days away from the last day of school, and you can bet that I am counting those days down. Something that I tell people when they ask me what it takes to be a good teacher is this, that you have to simultaneously take things completely personally and not personally at all at the same time. Every moment has to matter, but at the end of the day, I have to give myself grace, let go of the things that did not go as planned, and go home and know I did my best. And why do I have to do this every day? So that I can come back tomorrow. The more I interact with people from different fields, the more I believe that this advice is good advice for anyone who wants to be great at their job. But it's also what makes the work so hard. It's also what makes the work so incredible. I am a proud Filipino American, and I became this way because of the stories that I was told. Stories have the power to mold people and places. Your theme today, Sulong, Innovate and Elevate through Literature and Knowledge. If you take anything away from my talk today at all, it is this. You have a story, and that story is powerful. You get to decide what that story does. Stories have connected me to my Filipino roots, and realizing that I had a story that was worthwhile helped me realize I had a special power. I could claim my voice and my identity. I get to decide what the story is and how it shapes me and the world around me. Huwag kang maghiya. Don't let your age or your shyness or your pride convince you that your story isn't unique and important, because it is. The booth here, over here that my mom was in earlier, has superhero masks and signs, which I think is really fitting because I really believe that stories are a special superpower. and we have a super responsibility to tell our stories. Growing up, I saw Filipinos who were nurses and Filipinos who were in the Navy, which is amazing and inspirational, but for so long, I thought that was the only future that was possible for me. Today, I see Filipinos in film, in art, in writing, in public service, like my mom. To learn their stories meant learning that anything is possible for me. We should all tell our stories, and let's make anything possible for our children. I hope that you come talk to me. You can grab my card, add me on Facebook. I would love to hear your individual story. If you think that nobody else wants to hear it, I'm telling you right now, I want to hear it. And I'm also in a play that's opening at the end of this month called Aguila, a duet of Filipino-American myths that will be in downtown San Diego, written by Filipino-American, starring mostly a Filipino-American cast. For the San Diego Fringe Festival, which is an international festival. So I hope that maybe you'll come out to that as well. I want to thank you so much for having me here today. There's so many inspirational people today here that I can't even begin to name all of you, just the people I'm interacting with. Everybody here has something special and should be acknowledged. So I hope that you take this as my acknowledgement of every single individual person in this space right now that I get to share with you. Thank you for having me here today. I was really, really honored at the invitation, Artie. Happy Philippine Independence Day to all of you. Thank you.
Beautiful message. I hope